Part 16. Global Copy, My Talent is Called Wind Spirit Moon Shadow. Author, Crying Boy Has Bad Luck. Chapter 151. The moon and stars are sparse. Luzaoki was cross-legged on the roof of the building, suspended in mid-air. The invisible spiritual energy around him formed a huge vortex and stood above Luzaoki's head, pouring into his body continuously. His golden elixir was spinning in his danchan, and the size was only half of what it had just been condensed out of, but the total amount of mana had not changed, and the circulation speed was far more than 5 times higher than before. Digi helped him temper his magic power, and she also benefited from him. Now she is very different from before. She can condense into an illusory shadow and leave Luzaoki's body to float outside. However, her figure is still only the size of a fist, like a Q version of the mini-villain. She held her chin while watching Luzaoki practice and yawned out of boredom. Amidst the surging wind and thunder, Luzaoki's momentum was rising steadily. There was a faint voice from downstairs, "Huh? Is it going to rain? Why do you hear thunder?" "Yes. The air feels a lot duller, but the weather forecast clearly says there will be no rain today. It's weird. The forecast is so bad." Luzaoki remained unmoved, not affected at all. His mind was united, his mana increased steadily, and he launched attacks to higher realms again and again. After practicing for so long, he has a thorough understanding of the current state of cultivation, and his magic power can be moved according to his heart. At this moment, breaking through a small realm is easy and effortless. Just hear pants. The golden elixir in the danchan expanded violently, causing changes in the situation and thunderbolts from the blue. The invisible momentum gradually dissipated, the spiritual vortex also disappeared, and all the clouds dispersed, revealing the bright moonlight. Luzaoki slowly opened her eyes, looking energetic and in a good mood. In his perception, the mana has been greatly improved. Both quantity and quality have been greatly improved. Taking a step forward from the early stage of the golden elixir, the mana has roughly doubled compared to before. Certainly. Not everyone is as exaggerated in their cultivation as he is. In fact, this was also thanks to Gean's early suppression, which made his cultivation grow more rapidly, and the upper limit of his mana expanded explosively. "Is it done?" Digi was in low spirits and didn't look happy for him at all. Luzaoki nodded, but before she started to speak, Digi turned into a stream of clouds and sank into Luzaoki's body. He took a hard sip on the golden elixir he had just broken through, and then fell asleep holding it. Luzaoki's face stiffened, with a black line on her head. "Introduce girls. Not a good person. Double happiness." His results came out the next day. Early in the morning, Xiaoyan called him and told him that he had become famous again this time. The only candidate in the country who got a perfect score in the liberal arts test of the college entrance examination. When everyone was complaining about how difficult this exam was, he suddenly emerged and slapped those people in the face. The total score of 750 points made everyone call BT. Xiaoyan first congratulated him and asked him to come to school in the afternoon, and a CCTV reporter came to interview him. Secondly, he also told him that he had completed his resignation and was about to leave Chengdu. Luzaoki felt a little melancholy. He was actually reluctant to part with this conscientious head teacher. 3 years later, the relationship is still quite deep. Although this class teacher has a sharp tongue, he is a real person with a heart of tofu, and his figure and face are very amazing. Ahem, Luzaoki meant that the head teacher was indeed very good to him. I applied for grants and scholarships for him as soon as he entered school. I was busy and worked hard on his affairs for a long time. Even if his talent is detected to be the gray that everyone considers to be the worst. Xiaoyan did not give up on him, encouraged him, and asked him to study hard. This also made Luzaoki respect her from the bottom of her heart. even though she sometimes seems verbose, nosy, and likes to boss people around. Cough, but that's not important. Seeing that she was leaving, he decided to give some gifts to the class teacher before leaving. I won't meet that guy again this time, right? Wuxia looked at the school in front of her, feeling a little uneasy. When she learned through internal information that the top student in the liberal arts exam was born in Rongcheng Middle School, her heart tightened. The shadow that the former top scorer in the martial arts exam brought to her was so huge. But after the last video was broadcast, the effect was extraordinary. Everyone is obviously very interested in this kind of news about a small person's counterattack, and many reports using Lu Xiaoqi as an inspirational model have followed suit. The TV station's ratings increased significantly, and even the leader who liked to curse with a straight face praised their team. But if Wuxia had to choose, she would rather not come to Chengdu. But things didn't go as planned, and they came anyway. After all, once you are born again, you will become familiar again. This time I didn't mention the candidate's name, I just mentioned which school they were from. Whether I could interview the top candidate in the liberal arts test would depend on whether they were willing to show their faces. The school leaders had been waiting at the side for a long time, and when they met, they naturally used the classic official tone and started to tease each other. When they heard that CCTV was coming to interview, they quickly arranged for people to make sufficient preparations. The banners that should be put up have long been put up, and the sanitation has been cleaned up. The students in the third year of high school have left, but the sound of reading can still be heard in the classroom. That is the voice of the next high school senior students. The photographer followed behind with a camera, taking in all the scenery of the campus. I have to say that the environment of Rongcheng Middle School is still very good, and the scholarly atmosphere is also very strong. In many places, there are famous sayings and aphorisms of great men as well as classic portraits and sculptures. Wuxia also did her homework before coming. After a simple opening remarks, she introduced the history of the school to the camera. Then various leaders spoke one after another. Even the dean and head teacher were interviewed. In Xiao Yan's words, the top candidate in the liberal arts examination is simply a typical example of a person who is both good in character and academics, positive, down to earth and steady, who studies with an open mind and works hard. As one of her own, of course she wanted to speak for Lu Xiaoqi. When Wuxia heard this, she realized that this image was far different from the top scorer in the martial arts examination whose brain circuit was different from ordinary people. She felt a little relieved in her heart. It would be nice if it wasn't him. After meeting him 3 times in a row, the female reporter really didn't dare to gamble. When they finally learned that the top scorer in the college entrance examination was willing to be interviewed, the whole team smiled. Their mission was successfully completed. Before she could be happy for long, a familiar voice came into the office. "Sister Yan, I'm sorry, I'm late, something delayed me." Lu Xiaoqi pushed open the door and walked out. The smile on Wuxia's face suddenly froze. Slowly turning around and seeing that familiar face, her mood immediately broke. "How old are you? Why is it always you? Can it still get better?" Global copy, my talent is called Wind Spirit Moon Shadow. Author, Crying Boy Has Bad Luck. Chapter 152. After the college entrance examination results were announced, all senior high school students fell into graduation carnival. Regardless of whether his grades were ideal or not, he was in a rare state of relaxation at this moment. After working hard for so many years, I am finally liberated. Everyone started to play wildly, which was rare. The class teacher notified everyone to come and receive their diplomas and take group photos. He also announced the time and place of the first and only dinner party in high school. No one was absent, including the few students who left school early. Naturally, Chen Haoran was also included. 3.2.1, Eggplant. With a chorus of shouts. The youth of everyone in the class was frozen at this moment, and the film full of memories was filled with countless ups and downs in the past 3 years. I cried and laughed, tired and hurt. In the end, they all looked at each other and smiled, keeping this profound memory in their hearts. Teachers of all subjects cannot escape the tricks of lawless students after graduation. Even the head teacher is no exception. Many boys and girls laughed heartily at the thought of a great revenge is avenged. The unfinished homework turned into paper airplanes flying everywhere. The papers and books that I had reviewed countless times before the exam were packed and given to the uncle who collected scraps, in exchange for money for 2 bottles of iced Coke. There were also some boys and girls who took this last opportunity to boldly confess their feelings, attracting crowds of people to watch and jeer. The lovers who were together no longer concealed themselves at this moment, holding hands and walking openly in front of the teacher. The teachers also turned a blind eye and pretended that they didn't know anything. Some teachers even had expressions that said, "Sure enough, and I've guessed it a long time ago." He gave a thumbs up to the teenagers and expressed his blessing. Everyone fell into a rare happy time. "What? Are you leaving too?" Luzioki looked at the girl in front of him in surprise. Just now, when he and Chen Haoran were bragging and spanking, Zhao Sueking suddenly came over. Chen Haoran immediately showed an expression of "I understand. I'll get out of here." He found an excuse for diarrhea and stood up to leave. Luzioki. "It's really not what you think." But before he could say anything, Chen Haoran had already slipped away. Zhao Sueking also brought him news that surprised him. She is going to Jizhu. She is going back to the Zhao family. She came back with the second best test score in the country. This time, she wants to get back everything she lost. Luzioki opened her mouth, not knowing how to persuade her to stay. The rich woman is going to run away, and she won't take me with her. I feel a little bit reluctant to give up. Xiao Yan left, and so did Zhao Sueking. No wonder graduation season is the season of separation. The two looked at each other and were a little silent. Luzioki is not a fool. He knows that this rich woman is a little unusual for him, and most likely she is greedy for her body. But the two of them didn't get along for a long time, and he couldn't tell how he felt about her for a while. I'm sure I have a good impression, but love, this word is too heavy. He couldn't afford Luzioki. He could confidently say that he loved his sister, but it was difficult for him to say this to Zhao Sueking. The same is true for Zhao Sueking. She knew clearly that she liked Luzioki. But the baggage on her body does not allow her to stay where she is and love her children too much. She must move forward without stopping. Both lacked the courage to take the crucial step. There is one Liang Jingru missing between them. Xiao Yan secretly looked at it and shook her head. She had expected this scene. Unlike what she expected, both of them were more restrained. There is a maturity that is different from this age group. She was also quite complicated. This golden couple actually looks good together, but why? We chose a Chengdu specialty hot pot restaurant for dinner. Many male students raised their glasses and toasted the teacher and handed them cigarettes. They seemed to have a more social attitude. Everyone no longer talks about academic performance, no longer thinks about tomorrow, and enjoys the carnival at this moment. The meal took more than 2 hours. Eating from 6 o'clock to almost 9 o'clock. There are also some unconventional students who meet up to sing and surf the internet together. Luzioki shook his head. Childish. Can you be more mature like me? The head teacher told them to go home early and send her text messages when they got home. If playing late, be sure to say hello to your family in advance. Even though she is about to leave her job, she is still nagging as always. Like an aunt who worries about everything. Xiao Yan watched everyone leave, and when she turned around, she found Luzioki leaning on the railing with her arms folded, watching her quietly. The last wave of people has left. There were only two people left at the door looking at each other. What? Aren't you leaving yet? Xiao Yan walked over carelessly. Aren't you afraid that your sister will be worried if you don't go back so late? She wasn't wearing high heels today, and when she walked in front of Lu Xiaoqi, she actually looked up at him. This angle made her realize that the little boy in front of her seemed to have grown up and was no longer as young and immature as before. The two of them were close, and Lu Xiaoqi smelled a very nice fragrance on her body, mixed with the relatively pungent smell of alcohol. As the head teacher, she was often drunk today. However, as a strong Yuhui, it would be difficult for her to be drunk if she didn't want to get drunk. Lu Xiaoqi did not answer her, but asked, "When will you leave?" "Tomorrow morning," she said. "So fast?" Lu Xiaoqi pursed her lips, not knowing what to say. Xiao Yanfan glanced at him and stretched out her hand, "Come for a walk with me." Lu Xiaoqi supported her knowingly, and the two of them walked on the bustling street. "Sister Yan, what are your plans for the future?" Lu Xiaoqi asked. "I'm going to join my former teammates. I heard that they are doing well in an adventure group now." "What about you?" Xiao Yan asked him in turn. "I enrolled in Taito University and plan to move to Taito University later. My sister's body has not fully recovered yet, so I plan to take her there to get her health cured." Lu Xiaoqi answered truthfully. The two briefly chatted for a few words and gradually fell silent. Just walking forward slowly. Arrive. At the gate of the school she came from, Xiao Yan stopped and turned to look at him. "You should go back early." "Sister Yan." Lu Xiaoqi stopped Xiao Yan, who was about to leave. "I have prepared something for you. Consider this a leaving gift for you." As he spoke, he took out a ring. Xiao Yan had a strange look on her face. "Do you know that rings cannot be given to girls casually?" To be honest, when she saw Lu Xiaoqi take out the ring, her heart beat wildly several times. Lu Xiaoqi said nothing and put the ring into her hand. "Just open it and take a look. I hope you like it." This is exactly the prop Dragon Country standard storage ring. This prop was stacked by Lu Xiaoqi for 999 plus and placed in the parcel column, so it could not be used up. Taking it out now is not just to give it away. There is a piece of equipment inside. It was the Titan's Gaze, giant shield, that Lu Xiaoqi had given Zhang Hong before but had not given away. At this moment, it has been strengthened to 12 by Lu Xiaoqi, and the attributes of the entry are also very perfect. In addition to this giant shield, there are also expendable props such as siege repeater, catapult, giant boomerang launcher, etc. As well as a lot of materials that were previously exploded in the Tower of Confusion. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Global copy. My talent is called Wind Spirit Moon Shadow. Author, Crying Boy Has Bad Luck. Chapter 153. Xiao Yan checked the ring and was slightly surprised. "So many things. Where did you get them?" Lu Xiaoqi smiled and said nothing. Xiao Yan shook her head. "No, it's too precious, I can't accept it." With that said, he was about to return the ring to Lu Xiaoqi. "Hey! Sister Yan, you're out of sight now." Lu Xiaoqi held her palm with his backhand. "You have always taken care of me, and now you are leaving. I want to give you some small gifts. How can you refuse?" Lu Xiaoqi was serious and stared at Xiao Yan closely. "I have graduated now and you have resigned. We are no longer a teacher and student. You cannot refuse to accept a gift from your brother." Lu Xiaoqi's eyes were blazing, and Xiao Yan's eyes were wandering. She felt embarrassed for the first time and avoided his gaze. Her pretty face was slightly red, a little hesitant. Seeing this, Lu Xiaoqi quickly pressed the ring firmly into her palm. "Okay, it's settled, I'm going home too, bye, Sister Yan." Mua. Lu Xiaoqi stepped back a few meters, then turned back to kiss Xiaoyan goodbye. Xiaoyan raised her hand as if to hit her, and Lu Xiaoqi ran away. The corners of Xiaoyan's mouth curved and the ring twirled in her palm. Lu Xiaoqi, who was bidding farewell to Xiaoyan, took out her phone and called Zhao Sueking. Sueking, where are you now? I'll come find you. Zhao Sueking, who received the call from Lu Xiaoqi on the other end of the phone, felt her heart skip a beat and her tone became a little uneasy. I'm at home. Where are you now? I'd better come find you. The two agreed on a meeting place. Lu Xiaoqi went to the convenience store and bought 2 bottles of drinks, sat on a rest chair by the roadside, unscrewed 1 bottle herself, and sipped it slowly. He also drank a little wine in the evening and didn't deliberately use his magic power to suppress it. The night breeze blew and he got a little heady. So I bought a bottle of white tea for sobering up, and sipped it slightly. It's a little bitter. He smacked his lips, but when it went into the throat, there was a little bit of sweetness that made people want to stop. Not long after, Zhao Sueking's luxury car stopped in front of him, and she rolled down the window. Boarding. Lu Xiaoqi opened the car door with a drink in hand. No, I brought it for you. Thanks. Zhao Sueking took the white tea of the same brand as Lu Xiaoqi and put it aside. After watching Lu Xiaoqi fasten her seat belt, she asked. Where are we going? I don't know, it's up to you. Lu Xiaoqi waved her hand. Zhao Sueking stopped talking and drove off. Vehicles shuttle through city streets, passing through busy streets, and gradually head towards the suburbs of the city. Finally, we stopped at the driveway around the mountain. The two got out of the car. The mountain wind here is very strong and the night view is beautiful. Standing on the top of the mountain and looking back, you can take in the entire night view of Chengdu. Zhao Sueking held the railing with both hands and looked sideways at the scenery below the mountain, seemingly in a daze. Her previously cold expression softened a lot at this time, her long eyelashes blinked gently, and the light reflected in her eyes flickered. The hem of the clothes swayed in the wind, fluttering like a fairy, relying on the illusion to control the wind. She looked at the scenery, and Lu Xiaoqi looked at her, and the two were speechless for a moment. After a long time, Zhao Sueking slowly spoke. In the past, whenever I was unhappy, I would ask Mother Wu to drive me here. Looking at the endless beautiful scenery here, it seems that my mind can be broadened a lot. Lu Xiaoqi looked at her. So how are you feeling now? Zhao Sueking looked at him and raised the corners of her mouth slightly. Not bad. The evening breeze ruffled her hair and Lu Xiaoqi's mood. Perhaps because of the drunkenness, Lu Xiaoqi found the moonlight at this moment so intoxicating. He picked up the drink and took 2 deep sips, then slowly approached Zhao Sueking. As he got closer, Zhao Sueking felt her heart beating faster and faster. The two stood opposite each other, and the atmosphere around them seemed to be frozen at this moment. A ripple rippled between the two of them. BGM should sound at this moment. The past is gone and it will never come back. The red fallen leaves are buried in the dust. Buzz, the sound of an engine exploding in the street sounded, and a sports car roared past. The ambiguity between the two of them at this moment was swept away in an instant. Zhao Sueking. Lu Xiaoqi. Zhao Sueking turned around, trying to hide her blushing face, but her translucent red earlobe still exposed her shyness at the moment. Lu Xiaoqi coughed to cover up her embarrassment, then changed the subject and asked, "When are you leaving?" When this topic was mentioned, Zhao Sueking suddenly calmed down. 3 days later she said calmly. "Do you want me to send you off?" Lu Xiaoqi asked. "No need, I'll use the teleportation array to go directly." Zhao Sueking shook her head. Teleportation arrays have replaced airplanes and become the most convenient, fast and luxurious means of transportation for adventurers. It is said that the cost of such a trip is probably equivalent to buying an Audi. It is truly a means of transportation that only rich people can afford. After a moment of silence, Lu Xiaoqi took out a ring. This is for you. The things inside are very different from Xiao Yan's, including equipment, props, materials, etc. The equipment is the earrings and rings that the girl lent to him before. Now he has washed the entries and strengthened them to 12. The props and materials are the same as Xiao Yan. Thinking about it carefully, this seemingly indifferent but actually a bit arrogant girl was of great help to him. She gave him the first growth skill for a random reason, and it has now been upgraded to his main output skill. She also took her to the first dungeon. In the Tower of Confusion, Lu Zhaoqi not only harvested countless materials, but also met Lao Bai, repaired his talents, and gained many benefits. Without her help, even Lu Zhaoqi could grow up by herself, but it would never be as fast as it is now. Zhao Xueqing was startled for a moment, and watched Lu Zhaoqi hold her little hand and put the ring into her palm. Her face turned red again. This. The girl held the ring tightly, confused, talking nonsense, and was at a loss. Lu Zhaoqi looked amused and reached out to touch her head. Don't think about it, this is just a parting gift. The girl fell silent immediately after being pressed, and slapped his hand away dissatisfied. Don't press my head, I won't grow taller. You are tall enough now. It won't affect you if you don't grow too long. Lu Zhaoqi compared it. The girl's height was just up to his chin. He deliberately made a diagonal comparison and made a gesture near his chest. Zhao Xueqing's face darkened, and she raised her hand to hit him. Hey! Can't hit. Lu Zhaoqi was well prepared and immediately took a step back to avoid her normal attack. Zhao Xueqing bit her lower lip and walked towards Lu Paidu and Chang Xiaoqi aggressively. The two started laughing and playing on the top of the mountain. It was late at night, and Xiao Yan had already packed her luggage and placed it beside the clean and tidy bed. She was sitting at her desk, playing with the little gift Lu Zhaoqi had just given her. She was in a daze, not knowing what she remembered. Suddenly she raised her eyebrows. Hey, what is this? Among a large number of materials, a slightly rough hand-drawn book is placed in the most conspicuous position. Xiao Yan took it out and took a look. Cultivation Technique V1.0. What's this? Xiao Yan simply opened a few pages, and what she saw was a series of portraits of villains, with some fascinating text descriptions marked on them, which looked very mysterious. Xiao Yan was fascinated by it for a moment, and couldn't help but start making gestures according to the content described above. Cultivation Technique V1.0. Zhao Xueqing was sitting in her boudoir, holding a pamphlet in one hand, tilting her head and looking at the items in the ring. She took a sip of the white tea that Lu Zhaoqi had given her before and frowned slightly. A little bitter. But I am willing to return. Global copy, my talent is called Wind Spirit Moon Shadow. Author, Crying Boy Has Bad Luck. Chapter 154. Xiao Yan left. Zhao Xueqing also left. Both of them told Lu Zhaoqi not to send it away. But Lu Zhaoqi went anyway. Watching Xiao Yan dragging her suitcase onto the train, watching Zhao Xueqing disappear in the middle of the teleportation array. Lu Zhaoqi sighed a little, feeling that something was suddenly missing around her. Then a few days later, he started to get busy again. Although my sister's body has been recuperated, she is still a long way from practicing the immortal cultivation technique. Her meridians seemed to be smaller and more fragile than normal people because they had not been nourished by vitality for a long time. Lu Zhaoqi had to spend a lot of effort every day to take care of her sister's health. Fortunately, the technique has been practiced on Haitantu countless times, and he has mastered it without any accidents. It's just that every time after conditioning, my sister's face is red, it seems that her blood is rising, and she is a little hot. In conjunction with the Johnson & Johnson gymnastics that Lu Zhaoqi prepared for her sister, Lu Wanyi's health is really getting better day by day. She is full of energy and energy every day. Lu Zhaoqi took the time to meet Chen Haoran. Although he is not even considered a reserve now, he secretly learned several moves from the uncles in the adventure group, gained a new understanding of his own talent, and began to gradually develop his own moves. It is completely different from the submissive attitude before. Now he is full of energy, his figure is also slimmer than before, and he looks much stronger. The only thing that hasn't changed is the big round face and small eyes, which still give off a trace of wretchedness. There is no way to enter the dungeon without a reserve adventurer certificate, unless you are as lucky as Luzaoki to encounter a wild fog dungeon. Otherwise, Luzaoki would take him off directly. The two of them chatted together. When the head teacher Xiaoyan resigned and left, Chen Haoran expressed regret. He also had a good impression of the serious and responsible head teacher. When it came to Zhao Xueqing's departure, Chen Haoran was heartbroken. He hated the fact that Luzaoki had lost control at the critical moment. Everyone with a discerning eye knows that Zhao Xueqing is special to Luzaoki. It's a pity that the golden boy and girl in the class are not together. But Luzaoki didn't care, it was just a temporary departure, and it wasn't like he wouldn't see her again, so why panic? Can the target that someone likes me, Lu, still run away? Can a cooked duck fly? Laughing to death. Totally impossible. During this period of time, in addition to practicing, Luzaoki was also downloading dungeons like crazy. Collect materials in dungeons and collect materials under the missions of the adventure group, and accumulate wealth like crazy. While making money, you are also using the skill mechanism to continuously superimpose your own attributes. Any copy of him only needs the next time, and the materials will automatically be 999 plus. And with his strength, even a single player, below the difficulty level, can move in seconds. Originally, many dungeons could not be cleared with brute force, but Luzaoki's updated talisman entry combined with the package enhancement brought by his talent was really abnormal. His current destructive power is almost infinite. Maze. Sorry, I'll just walk in a straight line, and I'll break through the south wall for you. Agency trap. Can you break through my defenses? Suspense investigation type. I will clean the whole screen directly. No matter where you are, you will die. The key is that the two new skills he chose after winning the martial arts exam have made up for his shortcomings, and there is also a skill left behind by his adoptive parents that is very useful to him, and he has improved it after learning it. The properties are as follows. Arashi Yama rating, S, add 1. Level, upward arrow. Forcefully grab the monster in front of you and throw it backwards. The enemy will suffer additional damage equal to 80% of its own weight and the weight of the releaser. When the opponent uses the grabbing skill, releasing this skill will enter the judgment mode. If the weight is higher than the opponent's, the judgment will be additionally increased. 50%, the above weight calculation includes the package weight. Characteristics, discharging strength, strong attack, 3 levels of LAN. Consumption, 600 mana. Cooldown dash. Features detailed explanation. Discharge, the enemy after grabbing will lose resistance, and all attributes of the enemy will be reduced by 25%. Assault, the grabbing distance is increased by 100%, and the target can still be released successfully when the target is ungrabbable, the skill form will be changed. Sandanlan, after the grab judgment is successful, you will enter an invincible state, until the skill action is completed, and will release Arashi Yama 3 times in a row. The skill effects are superimposed, including the unloading and power attack characteristics, and the unloading algorithm is multiplication. Eye of True Knowledge rating, S, add 1. Level, upward arrow. After active release, the specific attributes of the target can be identified and have identification effects, camouflage and invisibility effects can be broken, illusions and traps can be broken. Characteristics, knowledge and knowledge, perceived flaws, instinct. Consumption, 450 mana. Cooldown dash. Features detailed explanation. Erudition and knowledge. The more knowledgeable and knowledgeable, the broader the knowledge, the higher the identification judgment, the greater the success rate. Current bonus, judgment add 3, success rate add 10%. Perception of flaws, the target's flaws will be displayed when released, and attacks on flaws will enjoy extra damage bonus. Instinct, each time it is released, the effect of a skill will be retained until the next time it is released. Attribute conversion rating, S, add 1. Level, upward arrow. You can switch the attribute bonus mode of specified skills, for example, switch a skill that adds physical damage to a spell damage bonus, and change a skill with strong magic power into an attack type. You can switch the skill damage type, meaning that it originally causes physical damage, switch to spell damage, switch skills up to 5, each time you switch a skill, the attribute bonus of the next skill will be increased by an additional 5%, meaning that the original physical damage bonus will be increased by 100%, but after the switch, it will be increased by 105% spell damage, the highest can be increased to 125%. Characteristics, stealing spells, Lankai, adaptive damage. Consumption, 800 mana. Cooldown dash. Features detailed explanation. Mana stealing, using the skill after switching attributes to attack the enemy will steal 1% minus 3% of the enemy's mana. Erashery, the first attack on the enemy after switching attributes will result in a 100% critical hit, and all critical hit damage will be converted into real damage that ignores defense. Adaptive attack, after attacking the enemy after converting the skill attribute, the attack will automatically be converted into the overpowering attribute type. For example, if the opponent is dark, it will be converted into the sacred attribute that can overpower darkness. If it is fire, it will be converted into overpowering fire type. Ice properties. With the blessing of these 3 new skills, Luzaoki is one step closer to becoming truly invincible. When he downloads the dungeon now, he basically opens Eye of True Knowledge, and then uses attribute conversion to specify Forced Vibration Sword, Lanji Shan, and 10,000 swords return to the sect, converting physical damage into spell damage. Then he summoned a Sea of Swords, directly submerging the entire copy. It doesn't matter what rules or procedures you have, they will all be destroyed with one sword. As long as it's not a nightmare level copy, it basically means one word to him, seconds. More importantly, with the Eye of True Knowledge, he can transform his own attributes into detailed data and see clearly. The properties are as follows. Character, Luzaoki. Chi and Blood, 23841/23841, Recovery Speed 371/S. Mana, 183465/183465, Recovery Speed 5369/S. The recovery power is stacked with the power of the 4 poles. It is too difficult to stack the energy and blood because there are too few monsters that can break his defense. Physical attack, 251,921, 10 times the weapon power of God's Hand and Hell's Curse plus 4 pole power and equipment special effects. Spell attack, 174,627, no weapon attributes, only Hell Curse plus 4 pole power and equipment special effects. Defense, 483,460, Hell's Curse and the power of the 4 poles and equipment special effects plus 10 times the defense of the Son of Heaven. Hit, 78,580, power of the 4 poles. Dodge, 517. Critical hit, 100%, probability, 30%, damage. Fission's own critical hit needs to be triggered after entering the attack state. The critical hit chance here is only the double effect of the critical hit of Hell's Curse and Fission's Kendo. 3 speeds, 5,493%, attack speed, 5,431%, movement speed, 5192%, release, Hell's Curse. Spell resistance, combined 46, power of the four poles. Abnormal resistance, combined 1981, Hell's Curse and Son of Heaven's tenfold bonus. Damage saving throw, 143, Hell Damned. After the Curse of Hell uses unequal exchange, the soul points are exchanged and the attributes will also drop. The current attributes are the last time they absorbed the Forbidden Soul Crystal and Luzioki's recent crazy book writing. Global copy, my talent is called Wind Spirit Moon Shadow. Author, Crying Boy Has Bad Luck. Chapter 155. Time flies and more than 2 months have passed. The weather at the end of August is like a girlfriend's face, which changes at will. It had been raining continuously for the past 2 days, but today it was replaced by the scorching sun, allowing pedestrians on the road to experience the power of autumn tigers. Go faster! Zioki. Lu Wanyi was wearing a sun hat and a light-colored dress, holding a small fan in one hand and a cute bunny bag in the other hand. She was walking on the way to the station and shouted back to her brother. "Ah, don't panic, it's still early." Lu Zioki had a refreshing short haircut, and was wearing a short shirt and cropped trousers. Her chest was unbuttoned, revealing the outline of her chest muscles. She was holding a bottle of ice water in her hand and followed her sister casually. Walk slowly. With his physique, he is naturally not afraid of severe cold and heat, but he is not an ascetic, so he naturally finds it as comfortable as he wants. After Lu Zioki's college entrance examination results came out, the phone calls at home didn't stop. All the famous schools called her more or less. This made Lu Zioki extremely annoyed. Fortunately, at the critical moment, the Imperial Capital Adventure Academy stepped forward and issued a special invitation letter announcing to everyone, "Lu Zioki is mine." Lu Zioki had agreed to Wang Yanran before, so naturally she had no interest in changing her mind before the battle. She just followed the trend and refused invitations from other schools on this reason. This is the first time the two of them have traveled far. Naturally, all their luggage was packed in the storage ring by Lu Zioki. Since Lu Wanyi is an ordinary person and cannot use the teleportation array, the two people's travel methods are limited to long-distance travel methods such as cars, trains, and airplanes. In fact, Lu Zioki originally wanted to buy a plane ticket, but her sister thought it was too expensive. Being a thrifty and diligent person, she planned to catch a train with Lu Zioki for more than 40 hours to the imperial capital. Naturally, he was unwilling to let his sister suffer this fate. The two had a small argument, and finally each took a step back and chose the high-speed rail, which was much faster than the train and cheaper than flying. The reason why they went to the imperial capital several days in advance was naturally not only to register for school, but more importantly, to take Lu Wanyi out for a good trip and appreciate the prosperity of the Dragon Kingdom's capital and the great rivers and mountains of the motherland. Especially the Panlong Wall, which is majestic and has stood for hundreds of years. It is said to be able to block the attacks of strong people in the sun. Before, my sister was weak and coughing and wheezing even after taking more than 2 steps. Naturally, she had no chance to see the scenery outside. Now that conditions permit, Lu Zioki naturally wants to take her around and look around. In the past 2 months, I have basically taken my sister to visit the scenery here in Chengdu. I have experienced all the various rides and facilities that should be experienced as long as my sister's physical condition allows. After so long of brushing up, Lu Zioki had almost lost count of the materials in his package, and he had almost taken over all the tasks in the Adventurers Guild. Only a few extremely troublesome tasks were left alone. The Adventurers Guild in the Sichuan area was wailing, with no missions to take on, and they dared not speak out in front of Lu Zioki. After all, they can't afford to offend this man. Basically anyone with some influence knows what kind of person Mr. Lu is. As a last resort, we can only develop into other areas and be forced to expand. A rare group of adventurers began to roll up. However, his large-scale selling of materials also caused market turmoil, and the prices of many materials were about to fall. Many adventurers who like to hoard goods and become hustlers are so numb that their faces feel green every day when they wake up. Fortunately, Luzaoki saw that the situation was not right and stopped in time, so that no greater harm was caused. After all this hard work, Luzaoki's wallet expanded unprecedentedly. With a savings of 10 digits, even if he stopped struggling and started to mess up, he and his sister could live peacefully for several lifetimes. But Luzaoki will definitely not be content with the status quo. He has never forgotten what Lao Bai once said to him. Nor has he forgotten the tragic situation in Digi's nightmare copy. The invaders hidden behind the scenes, the lifeless world, the dominated and controlled monsters. Luzaoki didn't want the world she lived in to become like that. He must grow up and protect this pure land with his sister and so many relatives and friends. Wow, the high-speed rail station in Chengdu is so big and impressive. Lu Wanyi put her hands on the brim of her hat, looked up at the majestic building in front of her, and exclaimed in admiration. Then he pulled Luzaoki's arm. Xiaoqi, look. Such a tall statue. Huh? What else is being built here? The walls are so high and covered with oilcloth. Since my sister's body has recovered, her mentality seems to be much younger. In addition to being diligent and thrifty in the past, she also has a little girl's innocence. It seems to have liberated the nature that has been suppressed for a long time. Her whirring sound attracted the attention of the uncle who was working on the construction. The uncle looked up and saw that it was a young, beautiful, and lovely girl. He couldn't help but smile and replied, "This is a sculpture for the strong man from the sun who saved the day when the monster attacked the city before. It will be finished soon." Oh, Lu Wanyi suddenly realized it and said to herself, "I don't know who this strong man is or what he looks like." Hey. Then you asked the right person, the uncle was beaming. The stone statue of my benefactor was carefully carved by me. It looks like a jade tree facing the wind, elegant and graceful. It is said that our benefactor is not very old, and his body shape and appearance are somewhat similar to this little brother. Oh, Lu Wanyi was fascinated by this, trying to picture in her mind what a powerful Sun Yao man looked like. Luzaoki's tender face turned red and she quickly pulled her sister forward. Let's go, what's there to see here? Let's go to the front and have a look. My sister doesn't know, how can he not know? That is clearly his self-portrait. Really? I've obviously been told to keep a low profile and don't make any noise about it. Why did you put up a statue? Luzaoki seemed to be complaining, but she was still happy in her heart. People from relevant departments should take action. Able to deal with. The two of them walked around the square next to the station and saw a lot of gadgets unique to Chengdu. These things are not worth much money at all in other places, but when placed at the station, they suddenly become the characteristics of Chengdu. Many tourists who come here are willing to pay for them. Even my sister had a small face-changing toy stuffed into her hand. All she had to do was turn the switch and the little doll would automatically change its face, which was quite interesting. Sister had no intention of wanting this little toy, even though the stall owner forced it into her hands. But the stall owner's ability to observe people's emotions has been honed to perfection, and he is eloquent and well-rounded. When he caught Luzaoki, he praised him for being so talented, tall, and handsome, and they looked so good together. He praised her so much that she was embarrassed to speak to her sister, and she praised her so much to Luzaoki that she just paid the money. After leaving the square and approaching the ticket check-in at the entrance, Lu Wanyi seemed to have recovered from the embarrassment just now. She hugged Luzaoki's arm and said with some embarrassment, "That aunt just talked nonsense, why are you still saying this? I bought something." Seeing her interesting expression, Luzaoki laughed and joked, "If I don't pay for it today, I guess my aunt will wish us a happy marriage and a baby." "Bah, The blush that had not dissipated on Lu Wanyi's pretty face came up again. She stepped on him lightly, ran ahead happily with her small bag, and took the lead in entering the ticket gate. He stood at the door for a moment, then turned back and peeked at Lu Zioki quietly. It seems like she's watching to see if he's following. Lu Zioki touched the back of his head and chased after him with a smile. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Global copy, my talent is called Wind Spirit Moon Shadow. Author, Crying Boy Has Bad Luck. Chapter 156. Lu Zioki bought a business seat. Because it took a long time, a full 8 hours, he was afraid that his sister would feel sleepy, so he bought the best ticket. In fact, a ticket at this price is almost the same as an air ticket, and even much more expensive than an ordinary air ticket. Of course, my sister was unaware of all this. Otherwise, she would have to blame Lu Zioki again for this extravagant behavior. The business class chair is adjustable, you can lie down or lean on it, and you won't feel any discomfort if you sit for a long time. The service attitude of the staff inside the high-speed train was even more ridiculous. As soon as the two got on the train, they came over and enthusiastically asked them for their ticket numbers, led them to the corresponding seats, and asked them what drinks they wanted to drink. Lu Wanyi listened to the waiter talking about a lot of drinks she had never heard of, and couldn't help but turn her eyes to Lu Zioki. Facing her sister's request for help, Lu Zioki smiled slightly and said to the flight attendant calmly, "Why don't you give us a recommendation?" The stewardess couldn't help but be stunned for a moment when she saw Lu Zioki's bright smile. I have to say that Lu Zioki's appearance is indeed good. From the 80-year-old nursing home to the 8-year-old kindergarten, it is difficult for anyone of the opposite sex to resist his gentle smile. It belongs to both young and old to kill each other. Not that it's amazing. It's the kind, warm and considerate feeling, just like drinking a cup of iced sour plum soup in the hot summer, and hugging the newly filled hand warmer in the cold. What stands out is a sense of comfort and comfort. The young lady nodded, her voice was much softer than before, and she said softly, "Then I'll prepare it for you too." Looking at the graceful back of the flight attendant walking away, Lu Wanyi pouted. Her mood dropped a lot when she encountered these novel things just after getting on the bus. My brother is so good that I really can't worry about it. She subconsciously wanted to touch the black charcoal head in her arms. This is a little habit she picked up after being taken around by her younger brother recently. The result was empty. Then I remembered that because pets were not allowed in the car, Heitantu was locked in the pet space by Lu Zioki and went to sleep. Perhaps sensing her sister's unhappiness, Lu Zioki didn't look back, but quietly reached out her hand, put it on her sister's hand and scratched it, and then held her warm and soft little hand. Fingers intertwined. Sister's heart immediately calmed down and she was in a good mood. Looking at Lu Zioki's side face, she showed a sweet smile. After a while, the flight attendant came over with a trolley and gave Lu Zioki and her sister a bottle of coffee and a small bag of snacks. When the flight attendant pushed the car away, Lu Wanyi asked Lu Zioki quietly, "Huh? The treatment on the high-speed train is too good, isn't it? Why? Why is it different from what I saw on TV?" She didn't say the second half of the sentence because someone happened to pass by the two of them. Lu Wanyi was afraid of being embarrassed and immediately shut up. Lu Zioki knew what she was wondering about, but just smiled and said nothing. He opened the snack bag, handed his sister a piece of chewing gum, and said softly, "Sister, if you feel uncomfortable and motion sick later, take a bite of this. If you really feel uncomfortable, you must tell me that the car is equipped with motion sickness medicine." Lu Wanyi nodded, unusually well behaved. In the past, when Lu Zioki said something like this, she would glare at him angrily, and then reply, "Got it? I am the sister." But now she rarely says such words anymore. It seems that after Lu Zioki became her support, she also enjoyed the feeling of relying on her younger brother. The train started slowly. The elder sister was sitting by the window, watching the scenery outside the window changing constantly, and turning her head from time to whisper to her younger brother. The younger brother leaned on the chair and looked at his older sister's gentle and pretty face, answering his sister's words seriously or jokingly. There were happy smiles on each other's faces. The road to the next stop is long, but the time to the next stop is short. Arrived at the second stop, City C. An unusually tall, bald man came up in the business class. He was wearing strange clothes from ethnic minorities and had a string of beads around his neck. He had a stiff face and sharp eyes. As soon as the bald man came up, the flight attendant came up to greet him politely as usual, but he waved his hand to stop him and just handed the ticket in his hand to the flight attendant. He stood in the carriage and looked around, his eyes finally fixed on Lu Zioki, and walked straight in front of the two of them. The two siblings were still whispering when they suddenly felt their eyes darken. Lu Zioki looked up, but it was this man who blocked all the light in front of the two of them, and stared directly at Lu Zioki with a strange look. He frowned, suppressed the displeasure in his heart, and asked politely, "Excuse me, what can I do for you?" ###. The bald man said something that Lu Zioki couldn't understand, and finally said in blunt Mandarin, Your destiny has changed, and you are afraid of a bloody disaster." Lu Zioki. For half a day, the relationship was like a fortune teller. If her sister was not present, Lu Zioki would have punched him twice. Fortune telling? I have the key, do you? But first of all, this was a public place, and secondly, his sister was by his side. Lu Zioki didn't want to show his bad side in front of her, so he suppressed his impatience and said, "I don't count my fortune, thank you." And at ##@, the bald man said again, but Lu Zioki didn't understand anything and was not willing to pay attention to him at all. Seeing this, the man could only shake his head and sit on the seat not far from Lu Zioki. What's strange is that he didn't sit still. He crossed his legs, put his left foot wearing cloth shoes on his right knee, and put his right foot on his left knee. Although his butt was touching the soft chair, his body was straight, and only half of his body was on the seat. The other half is hanging in the air, with his eyes closed, holding a rosary in his hand and opening and closing his mouth silently, as if he is chanting something. His behavior attracted the attention of countless people in the carriage, and even the flight attendants came out to persuade him not to do such an action, which was a safety hazard. However, the bald man remained unmoved and the flight attendant had no choice but to give up. The train started again. Lu Wanyi glanced at the weird man several times but said nothing. The words of that weirdo just now made her gentle and sensitive feel a little naughty in her heart. Lu Zioki comforted her in a low voice for a while, and then she smiled again. On the other side, Chengdu. After Lu Zioki left, a courier came to Chen Haoran's doorstep. "Mr. Chen, there is your package here." He knocked on the door and shouted politely outside the door. Come on, come on." Chen Haoran opened the door shirtless and sweating profusely. He was exercising at home when he suddenly heard someone knocking on the door outside and walked out without even having time to put on his clothes. "Is it Mr. Chen Haoran Chen himself?" the courier asked. "It's me." Chen Haoran nodded. "Then please sign here." The courier looked at the person, checked it with the information displayed on his device, and finally took out the receipt and handed it to Chen Haoran. "Okay." Chen Haoran muttered in his heart as he left his name crookedly on the receipt. "Strange, who will send the package to me? It's so formal." He watched the courier leave, picked up the scissors and unwrapped the cover. Layer after layer, wrapped tightly. A package the size of a shoebox was dismantled until it was only the size of a fist. Chen Haoran. Damn. It's better not to let me know who is playing tricks on me. Chen Haoran opened the last layer of packaging angrily. Inside was a plain ring. Huh? Space props. Chen Haoran was shocked. He picked it up and saw that it was a rare space prop on the market. And there seems to be something inside. Fuck, he opened the storage ring. What catches the eye is the gleaming AD-12 Purgatory Judge heavy armor. The legendary entry made his mouth water. Suddenly he calmed down. Who sent me such a precious thing? He took a closer look and saw a lot of materials and props coming out of the ring space, as well as a letter and a manual. He took out the letterhead and manual, and could see at a glance that it was Lu Xiaoqi's handwriting. This guy, he snorted, when did he become so awesome? Cultivation Technique V1.0. What is this stuff? He shook his head and put the manual aside. Then I took the letter and read it carefully. Global copy, my talent is called Wind Spirit Moon Shadow. Author, Crying Boy Has Bad Luck. Chapter 157. AQ. Who is talking about me? Lu Xiaoqi rubbed his nose. At this moment, he and his sister were sitting in the restaurant of the train. The time has come to noon, and the aroma of instant noodles and fast food is everywhere in the carriage. Lu Xiaoqi was naturally reluctant to let her sister eat these foods. After quietly asking the flight attendant, she took her sister to the restaurant area. Lu Xiaoqi originally thought that the food on the high-speed rail in this world would be as expensive and unpalatable as in the previous life. Unexpectedly, when the dishes were served, they were surprisingly exquisite, full of color, flavor, and taste. They were finally worthy of the price, which is half the price. He has passed the stage of refining qi, and now simply absorbing the spiritual energy of heaven and earth can meet his daily needs, but his appetite still needs to be properly satisfied. After all, Lu Xiaoqi is just a child. Yes, a man remains a boy until he dies. My sister was quite happy to eat. She has always had a good appetite recently. In the past, she could only eat a small bowl of rice, and she might not even be able to finish it. Recently, I can occasionally eat a bowl and a half. Of course, this may also be related to her recent increasing amount of exercise. After all, moderate exercise can also increase people's appetite. Lu Xiaoqi took a few symbolic bites and smiled as she watched her sister eat the food in the bowl with relish. At this time, the train had slowly arrived at the station and was stopping at a station in Yuzhou to replenish supplies. High-speed trains stop at relatively few stations, and the long stops are only 15 minutes. Compared with ordinary trains, which can take half an hour and stop at all stations, they are naturally much faster. He and his sister were chatting in a low voice, but suddenly he frowned, alarm bells rang in his heart, and a faint tingling sensation came from everywhere in his body. There is murderous intent. He stood up suddenly, ignoring his sister's surprised eyes, and pulled her away from the window. But the alarm from his premonition still did not lower. His sensory abilities were operating at full capacity, and countless noisy sounds entered his ears. Lu Xiaoqi's brain was working rapidly, identifying sounds, and she faintly heard a pop sound in the distance. Suddenly, a big hole opened in the front of the carriage. Fortunately, Lu Xiaoqi's reaction was extraordinary, and his dynamic vision was also different from ordinary people. In the blink of an eye, he had already quickly pulled out his dagger. Forced knife vibration. There was a ding sound. An armor-piercing bullet with a length of 10 centimeters fell to the ground, and the bullet dropped several times. Assassination. Lu Xiaoqi was a little confused. She didn't know why she encountered a plot that usually appeared in movies and novels. But his quick thinking immediately realized the dangerous situation he was in. He immediately jumped up with his sister in his arms and left the car through the big hole. He was actually fearless of this kind of assassination. But my sister is different. Her body is fragile and she is still an ordinary person. She has no ability to protect herself. Her safety must be guaranteed. Although Lu Wanyi's face turned pale, she hugged her brother's body tightly. Things happened so fast that before she even realized what happened, the two people were already flying in mid-air. Under normal circumstances, adventurers above moonlight are prohibited from flying in every urban area. But this is obviously an abnormal situation. Lu Zioki flew to a high place and summoned the black charcoal head. "Transform," he shouted, and his shaggy black charcoal-haired body stretched out in mid-air, and instantly expanded into a ferocious dragon. Lu Zioki landed on the dragon's back and put her sister down. "Sister, please stay with Hitantiu while I go take care of things," Lu Zioki said lightly. He turned around and said to Hitantu, "Xiao Hizi, take care of your sister." "Long Long, am I using your nonsense?" The black charcoal head let out a low groan to express his understanding. The black dragon quickly took off and reached a safe height. At this height, attacks on the ground were impossible to touch. Hitantiu also thoughtfully opened a magic shield to isolate everything outside. Lu Zioki then put down her sister, flew down, and approached the direction of the gunshots that she had identified before. Such a big accident caused great commotion on the high-speed train. Fortunately, Lu Zioki left in time and his assassin did not attack the train again. Under the guidance of the flight attendants, people on the train began to evacuate. Lu Zioki's perception ability has become so strong that it is like an omnidirectional radar. With the information collected, he can quickly determine the approximate location of the gunman when he fired. But when he arrived at the scene hundreds of meters away, the place was empty, and even the bullet casings had been collected. "Nonsense, he is engaged in assassination, how could he be waiting for you to catch him?" With this time, they would have packed up everything and blended into the crowd leisurely. They could even come back to observe the scene disguised as a melon-eating crowd. This is an abandoned high-rise building. The loud noise just now has attracted the attention of many people. The pedestrians who stayed here looked up and pointed at the high-rise building as if they were discussing something. Seeing Lu Zioki landing directly on the roof of the building, many bad guys stopped and took out their mobile phones to record videos and take photos. There were people coming and going downstairs, and it was obviously a bit difficult to identify an assassin with hidden murderous intentions. But this doesn't bother Lu Zioki. He sneered and picked up the dagger. "No one can escape safely after shooting me coldly. My special meow is forced vibration of the knife." Sure enough, even though the killer had disguised himself and mingled with the crowd, he still had murderous intentions for the target in his heart, and was directly sucked in front of Lu Zioki by the completely unreasonable forced vibration of the knife. The short blade hidden in the cuff also stabbed Lu Zioki's sword involuntarily. Kang, the short blade came out of his hand, and was bounced into the air in a circle before falling down. Lu Zioki turned off all the blessings, and with just a simple flying kick, the paralyzed and frozen killer lost the ability to resist and flew backwards. He hit the wall and cracked it, then fell to the ground and bounced twice. The killer struggled to get up, but his whole body was in pain and he couldn't muster any energy. This assassin's appearance is not outstanding at all. He has ordinary facial features, an ordinary figure, and an ordinary temperament. He looks like an honest middle-aged man. Originally, when he blended into the crowd, he was like water dripping into the sea. There was nothing unusual about him. It's a pity that he met Lu Zioki. As long as he is hostile to Lu Zioki, it is impossible to escape Lu Zioki's search. "Tell me, who are you and why do you want to assassinate me?" Lu Zioki slowly approached with a dagger in hand, a cold look on his handsome face. He wasn't really afraid of assassination. An assassination of this intensity is not even worthy of adding buffs to him. But he should never take action in front of his sister. What if I accidentally hurt my sister? This is considered a violation of Lu Zioki's taboo. However, because he wanted to find out the reason, he stopped his hand appropriately and did not directly turn the killer into ashes. In fact, he already had a guess in his mind. He was able to know the route of Luzaoki and his sister, and prepare an ambush in advance. At the same time, he openly assassinated others regardless of the rules of the Dragon Kingdom. Either he is a crook or a cultist. Wei Guo ran, although he offended a few, such as those from the Japanese country, their hands should not be that long. In contrast, cultists naturally have more reasons to take action. After all, Luzaoki ruined their good deeds, and Luzaoki's reputation has spread in the Yuehui circle. If you are interested in asking, you will naturally gain something. Since they have the ability to sneak into the 238th Army base to cause trouble, it means that their infiltration into Shu cannot be underestimated. Naturally, they have a way to get Luzaoki's travel information. Sure enough, the assassin coughed up a pool of blood, a fanatical expression appeared on his face, and he laughed wildly. God's will is unstoppable, and those who disobey will surely die. Luzaoki held her hands and tilted her head while watching him laugh wildly, but she denied her judgment. He suddenly said, "Actually, you are not a cultist, right?" The laughter stopped suddenly, leaving only heavy breathing. The assassin looked stunned, exposed. "It shouldn't be. My acting skills are obviously so good." "Say it. Who sent you here?" Global copy. My talent is called Wind Spirit Moon Shadow. Author, Crying Boy Has Bad Luck. Chapter 158. You won't say it, right? Luzaoki snorted coldly and started to take out things from the parcel column. Knives, guns, swords, halberds, clubs, flying needles, meteor hammers, iron chains, 9-section whips, vice, animal traps, steel awls. At the beginning, there are 18 kinds of normal weapons, but as they go on, they become more and more outrageous, and even the tiger bench, the Iron Maiden and the mouth ball appear. Various items were piled on the ground to form a hill, and the assassin's eyes changed from contempt at the beginning to horror, and he was sweating profusely. Luzaoki has downloaded a lot of copies recently. There are naturally countless types of equipment and props in the package. If you explode a lot of things, you will naturally encounter some unusual things. This is all the result of him getting rid of some of the things he no longer needs. The remaining more useful things were kept in the parcel column. Because of the effect of God's left hand, the more weapons he carries, the stronger he becomes. Coupled with the set effect of the leather belt, logistics expertise, you will get an additional quick bar for every 10 package slots you have. Combined with the unlimited package column enhanced by the talent package and the attributes of Yanhuang Talisman. The more items in his current package slot, the higher the damage. Even if he hadn't stopped his strength just now and turned off these blessings in advance, he could have directly kicked this assassin into a scumbag with just that flying kick. You know, regardless of attack, just talking about destructive power, his current destructive power is almost infinite. There is an old saying in the Dragon Kingdom that he who knows the current affairs is a wise man. I think the various instruments of torture now will be able to pry your mouth open. I hope you will cooperate with me well. I will not treat you badly. Luzaoki picked up a mace casually, weighed it in his hand, blew on it, and said in an angry tone. "Assassin! Keep someone under your command, Mr. Liu." It has to be said that the attendance efficiency of the special forces of the relevant departments is quite high. Before Luzaoki could attack this tough-talking assassin, Yuzhou's special forces team had already arrived. The person in the lead obviously knew Luzaoki and shouted from a distance. Luzaoki looked at the familiar logo of the special forces. He was familiar with Captain Li in Chengdu, so he was no stranger to the logo of the special forces, and could only regretfully put down the iron spike whip and meteor hammer in his hands. However, he still kicked him bitterly, causing the assassin to groan. "Leave this assassin to us for interrogation." The leader of the special team was a middle-aged man. He saw what Luzaoki had done just now and his eyebrows jumped wildly, but he could only pretend not to know and landed next to Luzaoki from the air. After looking at the assassin who lost the ability to resist, he took out the handcuffs and prepared to cuff him. He smiled and said to Luzaoki, "Mr. Lu, please rest assured, we are quite professional in this area of interrogation." As he spoke, he looked vaguely at the pile of weapons next to him. The remaining members of the special forces also landed on the roof of this abandoned building. Without exception, they all secretly glanced at Luzaoki's arsenal. Luzaoki pretended not to notice their little movements, coughed, put them all back into the parcel column, and then glanced at the handcuffs on the hands of the special forces man. He has actually seen this thing once. Captain Lee and others used this kind of handcuffs when they tortured someone before. Later, he specifically asked Captain Lee about it. This handcuff is really a special item. After being handcuffed by someone below Yuehui level, they will no longer be able to use their extraordinary power. Even a moonlight adventurer will have most of his power restricted after being handcuffed. It is true that it is a must-have item when traveling at home, killing people, and setting fire. It's a pity that this thing can only be equipped by public officials such as the Special Operations Team, and the conditions for use are on the premise that the opponent does not resist or is unable to resist. Otherwise, with Luzaoki's character, she would definitely come over to watch and learn. Then there will be 999 plus handcuffs lying in the parcel column. The captain of the special team found out that this guy was so weak that he couldn't stand up. Upon inspection, I found out that most of the bones in his body had been broken. Fortunately, he was lucky that no broken bones penetrated his internal organs, otherwise he would have died a long time ago. The sweat on the middle-aged man's back instantly fell down. He secretly glanced at the innocent-looking Luzaoki and swallowed slowly. "Well, Mr. Lu, you may need to go back and take notes with us." His already kind attitude became even gentler. "Okay, no problem, just wait for me," Luzaoki nodded happily. Luzaoki used telepathy to pick up her sister in mid-air. Hitantiou transformed into a little black dog again and was held tightly in his sister's arms. Luzaoki hugged her sister and slowly landed on the ground. She smiled and said to the captain of the special team, "Let's go." The elder sister also recovered from the attack just now, and looked at her younger brother worriedly, "Xiaoqi." That moment just now really scared her. Although she knew that the profession of adventurer was quite dangerous, this life and death moment was indeed her first experience. "It's okay, sister, this is a public official from the relevant department." Luzaoki comforted her sister softly, and then introduced her to the captain of the special team in police uniform. "Oh, by the way, what's your name?" Luzaoki then remembered not asking his name. "Middle-aged man. This stinky guy is really too much. But what can I do? It's not just about forgiving him." "Hello, Mr. Lu and this lady, my surname is Zhang, my bao is Zhang. Just call me Xiao Zhang." Arrogant, Luzaoki was amused and shook his head. "Your self-introduction doesn't feel right. You should say this. My surname is Zhang, don't be arrogant. I have a strong fist. I have been to Duolin and Vendang. Now I have gone through many changes, ouch." Before he finished speaking, his sister pinched him from behind, interrupting his continuous casting. "Captain Zhang. Ahahaha, Mr. Lu is really good at joking," he smoothed things over dryly and eased the atmosphere. Several teammates behind him had already worked very hard to suppress their laughter. Their lips were pressed tightly together and their shoulders were shaking. My sister looked so embarrassed that she almost dug out the 3 bedrooms and 1 living room with her toes on the ground. However, he deliberately interrupted her, and her sister forgot her previous nervousness and worries, and all the depression in her heart turned into resentment towards this inconspicuous brother. "Mr. Lu, the target of this assassination is very clear. It is placed on you. I wonder if you have any clues. At this moment, Lu Zioki and her sister were sitting at the nearest Yuzhou Special Forces office. There was a coffee table beside the two of them, with 2 cups of hot tea on it. It was steaming and smoking. Captain Zhang of the Special Operations Team sat across from them and asked Lu Zioki with the report on the attack in his hand. Lu Zioki originally wanted to shake her head, but a figure flashed in her mind. She couldn't help but paused, and then said, "In the car, my sister and I saw a very strange bald man. He told me something inexplicable as soon as he got up. He described this person's actions, and my sister remembered this strange man who left a deep impression on her, and nodded repeatedly." The Special Forces team nearby recorded their descriptions in detail, and immediately someone who had learned speed drawing used his description to depict the image of the bald man. "Mr. Lu, do you think he is such a person?" He raised the drawing board. Lu Zioki was a little shocked when she saw it, and couldn't help but give the technician of the Special Operations Team a thumbs up. "Pretty cool." Then he nodded, 80% similar, except his eyebrows are thicker and his nose is not as straight. After Lu Zioki's description, the portrait was 98% similar to him. The special team took the confirmed portraits of Lu Zioki and Lu Wanyi and nervously launched the next step of the investigation. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Global copy, my talent is called Wind Spirit Moon Shadow. Author, Crying Boy Has Bad Luck. Chapter 159. This incident actually caused quite a stir in the Dragon Kingdom. Although no casualties were caused, a carriage costing hundreds of thousands was lost, and related trips were delayed, causing significant economic losses. As the world's leading power, the Dragon Kingdom has not seen such a major incident of blatant assassination for a long time. People all over the country have focused their attention on Yuzhou. All relevant departments worked quickly, trying to seize clues to solve the case. The other passengers on the train transferred to other trains to their destinations in an orderly manner under their arrangement. Lu Zioki and her sister, who were related to this matter, were left behind for protection. After learning the news, the top executive of Chengdu immediately called Lu Zioki to offer condolences and expressed zero tolerance for such incidents and no tolerance for criminals. General Wang also called Lu Zioki to ask about what happened and the two people's conditions, and said that Lu Zioki would be escorted carefully during her next trip. After struggling for a long time, it was already night. Under the arrangement of the Special Operations Team, Lu Zioki and her sister temporarily stayed at the Special Operations Team's reception house and rested for the night. Early the next morning, Captain Zhang of the Special Operations Team found Lu Zioki and sighed with a frown. That person refused to explain anything and kept shouting cultist slogans. They found that the current clues were completely broken. We can only hope to get some useful information from the assassin, but it is obvious that he has a very tough mouth. If relevant evidence is not found for a long time, and under pressure, the only option is to blame the cultists and hastily close the case. No, he's definitely not a cultist. Lu Zioki shook her head and said in a positive tone. Huh? When Mr. Lu said this, does he have some key evidence? Captain Zhang immediately became energetic. It's very simple, Lu Zioki said calmly, I have had some interactions with those crazy people. If it were them, they would never leave a way out for themselves if they saw that there was nothing they could do, and they would commit suicide as soon as possible. Although this killer talks harshly, he has been living a good life, so from this we can judge that he is definitely not a cultist. Captain Zhang. What you said makes sense, but I am speechless. Because cultists commit suicide and you are not dead, you are not a cultist. Reasonable and convincing. But Captain Zhang also thinks so. Although the assassin always wanted to lead everyone's thoughts towards the cultists, the more he did this, the more counterproductive it became, making everyone suspicious of his purpose. Of course Captain Zhang didn't just come here to talk about this, he wanted to get more information from Lu Zhaoqi. Then do you have any guesses about his identity? Captain Zhang guided Lu Zhaoqi. For example, have you offended or had a conflict with anyone recently? Lu Zhaoqi tilted her head and thought for a while. Yes, but they probably won't come to trouble me again. Why is Mr. Lu so sure? I have always been kind to others. Over the years, there have only been two families who can barely be considered my enemies, but... Lu Zhaoqi stretched out two fingers and took one away first. One of the families is almost dead. If they are not dead, they are crazy. He took back another one. The other family, if you give them both the courage, they probably won't have the courage to be my enemy. Lu Zhaoqi was undoubtedly talking about the Su family and the Tang family. Needless to say, the Su family has collapsed. Although the Tang family did not collapse, after seeing his strength in the disaster dimension copy, he did not think that the other party still had the courage to fight with him. As a veteran of local power, when he should shrink his head, he should shrink back very slippery, and he will never act out of emotion. Captain Zhang. What a good person. His face became a little stiffer. I am a public official. Is it appropriate for you to tell me this? Captain Zhang asked around, but never got any useful information from Lu Zhaoqi. The main reason is that Lu Zhaoqi himself is also confused. So he stood up and planned to leave. At this time, Lu Zhaoqi provided him with a new idea. Captain Zhang, don't leave in a hurry. Actually, I have an idea. Lu Zhaoqi gave him an idea. Let's talk about it first. As an assassin, if your assassination fails and the target is not dead, what will you do? Lu Zhaoqi asked. Of course we'll find another way to kill him, Captain Zhang replied without thinking. Then he was stunned for a moment and looked at Lu Zhaoqi. Mr. Lu, what do you mean? Lu Zhaoqi smiled. I've been coming to Yizhou for a long time, and I heard that the snacks here are quite unique. If Captain Zhang doesn't mind, why don't you take me out for a walk? I directly used the Armstrong swinging pendulum style to lure the snake out of the hole, causing the little Karami on the opposite side to smash walnuts in their heads and be at a loss. We really don't taste good. Mainly I want to experience the simple local folk customs. In addition, Lu Zhaoqi is also very curious, who will come to assassinate her? That night, Captain Zhang changed into casual clothes, while Lu Zhaoqi was dressed very brightly, wearing a small silver white suit, shiny leather shoes, and a pair of sunglasses at night, with a stick in her mouth. Lollipop. When you go out dressed like this, you will naturally turn heads. It just made Captain Zhang embarrassed to stand with him. I can't afford to lose this person. This time only the two of them took action. All the remaining personnel stayed in the Special Operations Office to protect Lu Wanyi. Lu Zhaoqi naturally gave her sister a backup plan, which was the cute and useful black charcoal head. He and the little black dragon have a spiritual connection. If something happens, the other party can notify him as soon as possible, eliminating the possibility of his home being stolen. At this moment, he was walking on the bustling street with people coming and going, attracting the attention of many people. He was so arrogant that if the assassin was really secretly observing his movements, he would definitely find out. Such a good opportunity to assassinate, even if they think it is fishy, they will not miss it. But after a night of shopping, he masturbated a lot, but he didn't find any assassins. He didn't take it too seriously. After all, it was just the beginning. Where is this? There was no rush at all. Lu Zhaoqi had plenty of time, and the group of assassins should be the ones who were anxious. After all, there are not many such good opportunities. After a while, the escort promised by Mr. Wang will arrive, and they will have no chance at all. Captain Zhang, who was following Lu Zhaoqi, was carrying a pile of steaming and fragrant skewers with a black string on his head. This was the gift from the generous Lu Zhaoqi, who couldn't refuse at all and insisted on buying it for Captain Zhang. Captain Zhang looked at the handle in his hand and swallowed. Do you use this to test cotters? Which cotter can withstand such a test? Chiliu. So delicious. But what Lu Zhaoqi didn't expect was that his assassin didn't wait for him, but instead waited for the fiery and bold young lady. They saw that he had an amazing figure, a good face shape, and he was dressed in a, well, unique style, so they actually approached him directly and asked for his contact information. Of course, this is also inseparable from his increasingly outstanding temperament. In this regard, Lu Zhaoqi accepted all comers and left Chen Haoran's phone number in the other party's address book with a stroke of a pen. Haoran. Brothers can only help you so far. But then again, brothers can do what they can for my sake. It's really cool. Global copy, my talent is called Wind Spirit Moon Shadow. Author, Crying Boy Has Bad Luck. Chapter 160. The nights in Yuzhou are very long. Lu Zhaoqi lingered in the night market until Captain Zhang looked in pain, covered his stomach with one hand, and pulled Lu Zhaoqi with the other hand to tell him that he really couldn't bear it anymore. Only then did he reluctantly stop. The assassin who assassinated Lu Zhaoqi did not arrive, but many assassins who stabbed Captain Zhang Huhua in the back came. Next, he is destined to spend a long time on the toilet. I can't take it anymore. I really can't stand it anymore. I need to go to the toilet. Captain Zhang's face was ashen, his legs were clamped, his hands were covering his stomach, he said to Lu Zhaoqi, and hurried to a public place not far away. Lu Zhaoqi looked helpless, looked at Captain Zhang's retreating back and shook his head. Why? Fortunately you are still a local. This level is unbearable. The resistance is so poor. The snacks in Yuzhou taste really good, but they are also really spicy. Fortunately, the food in Chengdu is similar, so Lu Zhaoqi, who has been tested for a long time, can still withstand it. Besides, for a foodie, a little bit of spicy food is nothing to worry about. He did not stand there waiting for Captain Zhang, but walked forward at a slow pace. Ouch! Around a corner, he suddenly bumped into a girl who was speeding towards him. The girl's pink lips were slightly pursed, her eyebrows furrowed slightly, and she was rubbing her two huge car lights with a look of pain on her face. Lu Zhaoqi took off her sunglasses and took a look. She suddenly felt guilty and said slightly apologetically, "Beauty, I'm sorry, did it hurt you?" The girl was about to get angry, but when she raised her head and glanced at Lu Zhaoqi, she immediately turned her anger into a smile and said sweetly, "It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter." Lu Zhaoqi nodded, turned around and was about to leave, but the girl quickly stopped him. "Hey, we are so lucky to meet each other, can you add a V star?" He said with a gentle face and a smile, "Of course, no." The girl was stunned. Seeing that he was about to leave again, the girl immediately reacted, grabbed his hand and shook it hard, saying coquettishly, add one more, add one more." "Okay." Lu Zhaoqi frowned and said, "Don't be like this. I have a girlfriend." "Oh. It's okay, I just added a V star," the girl said coquettishly. "No. I mean you hurt my girlfriend." Lu Zhaoqi tried hard to pull his hand out of the girl's hand. "Girl." She smiled softly, "You are so interesting. I like you even more." Lu Zhaoqi was unmoved and said sternly, "Woman, if you do this again, I will call the police." The girl giggled and put her arms around Lu Zhaoqi's waist. "Hey. I'm already hugging you tightly." Lu Zhaoqi frowned, feeling that things were not simple. He looked at the foot that was stepped on by the girl, and said with a serious face, "Heroes can be wronged, but you can't step on my Chelsea." After saying that, he pushed the girl away regardless of her astonishment. "Hey," she rolled her eyes, pretending that she wasn't standing still, and slowly fell backwards. Unexpectedly, Lu Zhaoqi, who did not understand the charm, was not moved at all and watched her sit on the ground. Girl. At this moment, her heart was probably broken, and she was shouting crazily. What kind of man are you? What kind of man are you? Perhaps feeling the resentment in the girl's eyes, Lu Zhaoqi asked sincerely, Guliang, are you okay? If you have nothing to do, just eat plums. The girl ignored him and said with a pout, I fell down and I have to kiss, hug and lift me up before I can get up. Lu Zhaoqi was even more sure of something. She put her hands on her hips and said, I'm just kindly reminding you, you're blocking the blind road. After saying that, he turned around and left. Girl. The atmosphere suddenly became quiet. The girl was silent for a moment, sighed, and slowly said, how did you find out? Lu Zhaoqi didn't look back, just shrugged and said calmly, your skills in delivering newspapers are too poor. I suggest you go to New Oriental to find a technician for 2 years of training. The girl asked unwillingly, don't you believe in love at first sight? No, 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 Lu Zhaoqi stretched out her index finger and shook it, I only believe in sexual motives. What is love at first sight? Pooh. Anyone who believes this nonsense has been deceived into cheating. Cheating money and sex is already a big loss. If you want to cheat my kidney 13, how can you do that? As expected. The girl smiled, and her expression suddenly turned ferocious, the stinky men in this world deserve to die. As she said that, she jumped up and raised her hand to hit Lu Zhaoqi. Lu Zhaoqi felt the sound of wind, turned around, and then took a few steps back. Boom, the girl's white and tender hand hit the ground with a loud noise, and a deep pit was sunken into the ground. When she stood up, she already had a pair of gloves in her hands, and her innocent and charming face turned cold and vicious. She squinted her eyes and looked at Lu Zhaoqi, her cold eyes wandering up and down Lu Zhaoqi's body, as if considering where to start. But Lu Zhaoqi also frowned. In order to stay alive, he had to pay attention to the severity of his attacks, otherwise this beautiful girl would become a sticker if he was not careful. Got it? His eyes lit up, he pointed his right hands together into a sword, and applied a buff to the opponent with his backhand. Holy protection! The opponent was initially shocked by his actions, but he found that there were 2 more guardian elves on his head. His attributes and strength increased sharply. He couldn't help but smile evilly and said, it seems that you are sincerely willing to die. If that's the case, then I'll help you. As she spoke, her aura surged, and she rushed towards Lu Zhaoqi with unparalleled power. Then, Arashi Mountain. Lu Zhaoqi reached out and grabbed it, and an unparalleled suction force came out. The girl was shocked to find that her skill was actually torn off, and her whole body was sent into Lu Zhaoqi's hands without any resistance. Lu Zhaoqi squeezed his hands, and a force of energy spread all over the girl's body along his palms. She sat up and all the strength gathered in her body was defeated by this energy. She watched helplessly as she was being beaten by Lu Zhaoqi. Hold it up behind you. Then, a fatal blow to the back. Boom. Landslides and landslides. People nearby felt the earth shaking and thought there was an earthquake, so they hurriedly fled for refuge. Vehicles on the road sounded alarms one after another, and many nearby buildings that had been turned off even turned on their lights. Originally, Lu Zhaoqi had 3 levels of this skill, activated 3 times in a row, but the girl failed to live up to expectations and couldn't survive the first level, so she rolled her eyes and hit GG. The girl lying in a huge pit with a diameter of tens of meters was slowly reshaping her body in the blue light. Lu Zhaoqi watched the scene with her arms folded. He also didn't expect that the person who helped him experiment with the resurrection effect for the first time would actually be his enemy. Lu Zhaoqi squinted her eyes and clicked her tongue in surprise. Seeing the girl slowly resurrecting, his first reaction was, so big. So white?